Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Rally with Racquet podcast. If you aren't familiar with John Galt, who is John Galt? We just already need to get that John Galt meme out there. He's of course the assistant coach of LA Gladiators, a person who has recently endeavored into the Overwatch League for this season, and I happen to have him on my podcast. So first of all, welcome to the Rally with Racquet podcast, mate.
Hey, Racquet. Yep, it has been a while, so
It has.
yeah, had to do a podcast again with you.
Yeah, for people who may not know, John Galt used to be on a podcast called Overtime a little while ago for the Oceanic scene in Contenders, and he was previously coach for, I believe, Darksided at the time when you were on the podcast as well. Yeah, so that was a while ago, so it hasn't been like it's been quite a while since we've had a sort of long talk discussion type format, and yeah, I'm really excited because this has been in the works for a while. Because magically, I have done a bad justice for you, John Galt, by waking up at incorrect times and misidentifying like the PST versus OCE time. But hey, we're here. What time is it for you actually right now? But by the way,
3 a.m.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, for the record, you were the person who said, "Can we do it now?" So you know,
3 a.m. in 3 a.m. in gamers time is like 9 p.m. So yeah,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
good. We're good. Yep.
Exactly. Well, it is 9 p.m. here, so it's actually equivalent. So well, where do we start? Where do we start? So I guess I want to talk about your ongoing journey as a coach. Coming into Overwatch, when did you sort of start thinking to yourself that I want to be participating in this game as a coach? Was it sort of from the beginning? Did you have to wait a little bit because your first obviously journey was through Pacific as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
My introduction with Overwatch started in the closed beta, where I got the game. The game was like free for 2 days, and then anyone and everyone around the world could log in and just play the game. And then I played with my friends, fell in love with the game, and I think that was the start of Overwatch. I definitely didn't plan to be a coach at first, but as I played the game, as millions of other Overwatch fans play the game, you play with your friends, and so did I. And when I played with my friends, the only difference is I took on the role as a teacher, because when I started playing the game, I had a decent rank. I wasn't like top of the top, but I was good enough at the game to be top 5 to 10% of the population. The rest of my friends, it was their first FPS game, so they don't have good aim. Or I'm not saying I have good aim, but I definitely had like maybe average to above average aim, while most of them were struggling with mouse and keyboard. So I started creating videos, looking through their mistakes, teaching them about how to play Overwatch. Just really, really basic stuff. Why did you die here? How do you not die here? How do you play Reinhardt? This is called a shield. A shield blocks damage. You kind of want to use it a little bit more, like stuff like that. I remember I had like a friend who always used his shift ability as a Reinhardt. He always pinned and he never used his shield. When I was looking through his matches, right? He recorded his matches. His shield never dropped below 1,500. That's how little he used his shield. He almost always swing his hammer, almost always use his pin. So even though I would like to say I started coaching then, definitely wasn't relevant towards higher level Overwatch. Yeah.
I mean, look, everyone has to start somewhere.
Yes.
I guess, but like looking at your philosophy and how that sort of came to be. Like transitioning that into Overwatch, because you yourself as a person, you sort of have that leadership mentality. Where do you think that mostly comes from?
I think I told people this before. I was a sergeant in the Singapore Army. In Singapore, you have to serve the army. It's mandatory. And when you enter the army, you have to go through boot camp, like standard stuff. At the end of the boot camp, a small proportion of recruits are given an option to enter command school, and I accepted the offer. So I started training in command school that took about 9 months, so close to a year, 9 months. Total training was close to a year, where I trained in standard army stuff. So how to use a gun, how to strip a gun, different kind of guns, right? A pistol, a revolver, a rifle, just general stuff, and not just weapons as well. The most important thing about army, like what you mentioned, is the ability to lead people your age and people from all kinds of backgrounds. So when I was in the army, I would say that one of the reasons why I was selected into command school was also maybe because of my education level, right? I was in university, I was in college, so and the men I was commanding, some of them were high school dropouts. Some of them, they were from all sorts of walks of life. So I think that really taught me. That really gave me a look into what leadership was like, because I think every single time you go through an experience like that. In the army, whether it's through a military exercise, whether it's through another experience, it doesn't need to be the military, it could be a different life experience. It changes the definition of what it means to be a leader. So in this case, I built my definition of being a leader in the army. Yeah,
that's actually very interesting, because I don't think really many people can say that about themselves in relation to coaching, with having such a sort of extensive background in transitioning that leadership, because of course you applied that pretty much instantly, like playing with your friends casually, and then of course you even put that further, rather than just talking to your friends and saying, oh, stop charging all the time, and then you transitioned it into, of course, a professional manner. So how was that like, sort of just making casual videos to help your friends, and then putting it into place for a sort of more competitive environment?
Okay, so
it's a while ago.
So yeah, I'm trying to organize everything into like a neat timeline in my head, because it's been a while. Yeah. So the friends I taught were from school, right? So I went to army first, and then I came off army. I started going to college, and I continued my studying for my degree, engineering degree, and I met a lot of friends there. And then Overwatch started in 2016. And I taught my friends how to play Overwatch. And like you mentioned, I naturally took it upon myself to teach my friends how to play Overwatch. I didn't think it was like a duty or anything. I genuinely had fun being a teacher, being a mentor, being as you said, a leader of sorts. So yeah, and I really enjoyed my time teaching my friends. And I think one thing led to another. I brought my friends into tournaments. And it was a really interesting experience, because my friends, I mentioned that they were really bad at the game, right? They were like bronze to gold. So, every tournament we enter, we'll get our ass kicked, right? And I took on a coaching role, because instead of playing with them, I thought I could help the team. I thought my influence in the team could be greater if I could teach them like the basic strategies that the game needed. And from that, I catapulted myself into coaching the school team instead of coaching just my friends, because we were from the same university. I started coaching the school team, and then from the school team, I was introduced to an open division team, and then I continued coaching into open division, and then the journey started. Right, the path to pro starts from open division, and that was when the path to pro started for me.
Awesome. And actually, one question before we go through the path to pro stuff: do you have any sort of history before Overwatch, like in terms of a competitive background?
You mean esports, or you mean any form of competition?
Or esports. We'll just stick with that for now.
Okay. For esports, no. I played a lot of computer games, but this is my first serious esports.
So, that's actually quite interesting, because I know, a lot of other coaches that I know. They sort of either come... Well, I know a few that came from League, actually.
I know of a lot of coaches that came from League of Legends as well, like academic coaches, coaches that are now relatively renowned in the scene. They had a lot more experience, because they started from, like you mentioned, an already established esports, whether that be Counter-Strike or a League of Legends. Most of them actually came from League of Legends that I know of, like you said.
Yeah, that is actually quite interesting. But either way, I don't want to digress into that. But so... the path to pro, of course, it came into fruition.
The path to pro.
Yeah, it is a real thing. I mean, look at yourself, mate. You transitioned through three different regions. Of course, the
Yep.
first one being Pacific. So how was it like getting your foot in the door? And I sort of in comparison in relation to like your Oceanic performance and now your Overwatch League, how sort of iconic is Pacific, and how much have you learnt since then? I guess I've thrown a bunch of balls at
When I
you.
think of Pacific, right? Yeah, I mean, uh, I think my story isn't like very glamorous or anything because, uh, okay, if you look at a coach like Kai Kai, right? Kai Kai, he joined Envious, and he's even from 2016, his path was relatively exciting. It was adventures in Korea, in Apex, into Alienware Monthly. It's just really really exciting competitions and tournaments. When you start in Pacific, when you start in a smaller region, you don't have all these glitz and glamour, which isn't a bad thing or a good thing. It's a different path, right? And one thing about the Pacific region, one thing about being in a smaller region, and it's not just for Pacific, but also in the Oceanic region, uh, there is a lot of conflict resolution that isn't always about strategy or isn't about teamwork. Because you must remember that many of these players in the Path to Pro, some of these players are really, really young. They're like 16, 17, 18. We're going to start off with the premise that most coaches are older, right? It's not always true, but most coaches are older people. And you are kind of like that you're everyone's dad. You're taking care of everyone mentally. You're taking care of everyone strategically. And people come to you for to resolve conflicts, right? If people in the team starts arguing, who do they go to? They don't go to like to a third player. Normally they go to the coach because the coach is in a position of authority. So I think one of the most memorable stuff in the Pacific and Oceanic region happens to be conflict resolution. So that was more or less the team for me when I was in Pacific and Oceanic. I find that there was a lot of drama in the tier 3 scene. So I was almost always up my neck in stuff I had to settle, right? This guy got kicked, that guy was hacking, or maybe that guy was hacking. I'm not even sure whether that guy was hacking. And this guy got into a fight and he got arrested by the police. That's a real story, by the way. Like, he can't go into the tournament because he got arrested by the police. And then, this guy. No, then there are happier stories as well. There was like a Contenders tournament, and then this guy couldn't attend because he was selected to be an officer in the armed forces. So he had to go for like his commissioning parade, and he forgot to tell us. And then it literally was a Contenders match. So there were happy stories, there were sad stories as well, but there was a lot of conflict resolution, and I think that was what enabled me to grow in the Pacific region. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a sort of funny thing, right? Like conflict resolution is one of the more basic things that is applied with coaching, especially throughout like the tier 3 scene, because a lot of people aren't organized, and for the most part, especially with like the Western scene, it's sort of newish coaching. Like this has been established in other regions for like quite a long time. So I mean, it's getting better and better over time, but like conflict resolution is like the very, very basic sort of concept that is brought throughout the players, because I feel like that's the best way to gain like players' respect initially, especially in tier 3, because if they know that you can solve a sort of basic problem within a team, you worded it perfectly. It is sort of like that father figure, right? So if you can answer their basic queries, and once you answer those ones, they can sort of apply that logic to the rest of the stuff that you're teaching as well, and they can start to respect you more. Yeah, I find that quite interesting.
And it's really, really hard most of the time too, because there are many ways to resolve conflict, right? Even though I said conflict resolution, and the first thing that comes to our mind is that, two people arguing, they're sitting at a table, and you come over and you play the judge, but it never is as clean as that. Many a times there are rumors, there are people bitching about other people, and you have to be above it all, right? You have to show that you are a voice of maturity, and that's the hard part, because it always is hard to be mature, and the more you're mired in this, or in all this drama, the harder it is to be mature, right? What if a player comes to you and say, "Hey, Luke, I think that guy is hacking," and he's very adamant this guy is hacking or importing or whatever? How do you go about finding out that issue? If you go to the player, the alleged player, and you go like, "Hey, are you hacking?" He's gonna take offense, right? And if you don't kick him out, maybe that guy quits your team, and he says, "Oh, you know what? If that guy's in, I think he's hacking. I'm gonna quit your team." You know, there's always so much. Intricacy in this conflict, and there's never one correct solution. So there's no like, it's not like a 1 and 0. There's the correct thing to do and the wrong thing to do. Many a times you have three decisions looking at you in the face, and all three things are the wrong thing to do. You just got to choose like the least wrong thing to do, and that's the funny part about coaching. Like more and more you realize that it's not always about strategies. It's also about being a role model, and that's one of the hardest part about being a coach. Yeah.
So comparing that to where you are in the Overwatch League, obviously, how important do you think it is to have the sort of more elaborate support structure around the coaching staff? Because obviously there are certain sections within coaching, like it isn't just cut and dry, this covers absolutely everything, but like in the tier 3 scene, that sort of needs to be apparent. That person needs to be a sort of all-rounder to attempt to get their foot in the door. I think generally you need to have your base covered in most areas, but obviously at the highest level, when you have so many sort of like when you have a structure put in place, you want people specialized in those areas. So how important do you think in terms of managing a team structure-wise, is it sort of by having so many different roles within a team in terms of your coaching staff? Like obviously you have your main coach, assistant coach, like you have life coaches. How important is it to have those things all mended together?
I mean, it depends on how the question is phrased. So in a perfect world with like infinite amount of resources, definitely you would prefer like that support structure, because having the assistant coach and a main coach and then multiple assistant coach, analysts, even like a mental coach, right? I think Valen had like a psychologist or something. It's like a doctor, and then other teams have like performance coaches. So if you have that kind of support structure, definitely you're going to do very, very well. But your question is how important it is for tier 3 teams to have it. See, the way I look at the tier 3 scene is the tier 3 scene is a test, right? If you're speaking about coaching, it is a test for a coach to see whether it can function at the highest level of efficiency and strategy, even in a place where there isn't much support structure. It's the same for a player as well, right? If you're a player and you flourish in the tier 3 scene, like you're learning really, really fast, even though your coach is inexperienced and your coach isn't teaching you anything to do with how to optimize your Xayah play. Your coach is only copying like composition from Overwatch League, which is not a bad thing by any means. I say your coach is only teaching you the macro strategy, where to stand, what composition to play, and that's already really, really effective of a coach. But you wouldn't have as much resources as you would in Overwatch League. Yet, if you have limited amount of resources, but you're still able to flourish in the tier 3 scene, then it leads to the conclusion that you probably would do very well in the higher level scene, like the tier 2 scene and above, because now you have more structure, right? Now you have more resources. So if you already can grow as a player in the tier 3 scene, you definitely can do the same thing in the tier 2 scene and beyond.
I especially think this sort of works with lesser regions as well, in that it's more important to stand out, because I used this analogy on the Overtime podcast last week, in that, say for example, you're an Overwatch League team and you're scouting for players. With regions like South America and like Oceania, if you're an Overwatch League team and you're trying to scout for talent, you're probably looking at like the top 1 team. Like 2 is maybe even a bit of a stretch, right? So you're only really interested in the winner of the scene, and you're interested to see like how dominant they are, because for example, like within the Oceanic scene, Drop Bears have won several times in a row, and every single time they manage to get a player either put in. I mean, of course we have Hex in Boston, and we have like Trill,
Color Hex, Punk, Trill.
Punk, yeah. So 3 of those players like immediately gone, and what's the common factor? They were both like from the top team at the time, right? Or all of them, sorry, were. It is certainly very interesting, because that statement certainly does hold true to the tier 3 scene, but in sort of North America it does, and Europe it does hold true too, but not to the like most extent from other regions. But it is definitely an interesting topic. But one thing that do want to quiz you about too, in terms of the comparison between Contenders teams versus Overwatch League teams. One thing that I like to discuss around players and people from Contenders is like finding an identity and establishing it. And like the problem is that I see with Contenders and the players that are sort of within the structure and Overwatch League is not on, they find it very difficult to innovate, right? Because a lot of their reference points, and of course we do sometimes have the issues of they're on significantly different patches, which you know is definitely a discussion to talk about. But the general main point I'm trying to get across here is that players are looking for blueprints from Overwatch League teams, generally,
Yep.
like in relation to Contenders. How important do you think that is? But because, well, actually, I'll rephrase the question. In relation to like the skill ceiling, right? I mean, we're in a meta where it's predominantly goats, but there are like compositions that you can work around and like structure in order to tinker around certain maps, right? Do you think it's exactly necessary for Contenders teams to be copying Overwatch League strategies, considering like, for one, most in general, Overwatch League players should be at a higher level, and teams, in terms of synergy and overall like individual skill, and two, obviously it's going to be a completely different practice environment, like team houses and stuff. Do you think it's necessary for the Contenders teams to be doing that, or do you think they should find their own separate identity?
I think you want to copy like Overwatch League as effectively as possible or as efficiently as possible. You're not going to copy everything wholesale, because there are many things that you are not going to get. For example, let's say Dallasville has like what, 5 coaches, and they have positional coaches, right? So they have coaches that tell individual player, like as a Reinhardt, you shouldn't fast, like these 3 fast right is wrong, that 4 fast right is correct, and that's something that Contenders you can't do, because it's just not effective or efficient. You don't have enough hours in the day to look through 6 different members, 4 hours each person, right? So if you are screaming for 4 hours, if the team is screaming for 4 hours, that means there's a total of 6 times 24. There's a total of 24 hours of pure personal viewpoint, like pure personal POVs. And that's literally impossible to look through everything and think about the mistakes critically. So you kind of have to try it, right? You have to pick like and prioritize. So I would say you kind of want to copy what you want to copy from the Overwatch League teams are compositions and maybe fundamental strategies. And these 2 things will carry you far, because these things are things that the Overwatch League teams have experimented for many, many weeks before they came out with the composition and the core strategy behind it. And these are the things you want to copy, because you don't want to trial and error your own set of rules, because it's ineffective. Like experimentation is all good and just, but you need a lot of time, you need a lot of effort, and you need a lot of resources to do it. So I think it's a test for the players in Contenders team and Open Division team. The true test comes when you are copying and how well you imitate them. Like how well do you copy them? Because even as you copy, and the other Open Div teams copy goats, and then Contenders team copy goats, there's quality of copies. Is your counterfeit the counterfeit that like holds up to like watermark and people checking, scrutinizing the each piece of money, or is yours like smudged and obvious that this is like a copy, and a bad copy at that? Like it's a bad copy because your Reinhardt that obviously is not playing the exact same way as the enemy Reinhardt. Your Xayah obviously doesn't know how to use bubble, even though you're playing Goats comp, you're playing it really slow, etc. etc. So the basic fundamentals of most Contenders team and Open Div team is understanding the crux of the comp, and the crux of the comp can be copied from Overwatch League.
Mm-hmm. Very comprehensive answer as always, John Galt. You're never a disappointment in that regard. That's a good thing about interviewing coaches. Actually, it's because it's sort of their job to have the most like the best response possible. So
can I go off topic a little?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So one thing about being an Oceanic coach and a Pacific coach is, or used to being a Oceanic coach and a Pacific coach is, I'm still really, really concerned about the scene. So I'm still following like both Contender scene really closely. I have friends in global esports, They used to be called Incipients, the team I coach. And then I have friends in a lot more friends in Oceanic region, right? There was Heist, who now have a new name now. There's Blank Esports, totally different team. Sydney Drop Bears, who has Tita Watt now, and then of course My Freaks, who my friend CC is coaching. And I've been looking at a lot of these strategies, and I've been looking at a lot of the compositions as well. And can I say that? I think both Oceanic team and Pacific. Okay, the Oceanic region, at least the bottom few teams, I think they're not really doing a really good job of copying. So since we're on the topic of copying, I would say that as a coach, right, as a players, especially as a coach, you need to be a competent coach. And to be a competent coach in Contenders, you need to, at the very minimally, understand the fundamentals of the meta composition. So yeah, I'm not sure how critical I can get, but
man.
I feel like, yeah.
It could be getting the hammer out.
No, okay, I'm just going to stand on the line. I'm just going to tread the line really carefully. If you're a Contenders coach, you must be really, really careful of what compositions you copy from the Overwatch League, because some compositions are hard to understand and hard to run. So if you copy the composition wholesale without understanding exactly why they're running that composition, or you're just copying it because you think that it's the best composition and you don't have a good understanding of it, your team doesn't stagnate. Your team actually deteriorates, because all this time where you are copying like niche compositions and not learning the fundamentals, you're teaching the team like compositions is out of the norm. These are time that the other teams are screaming traditional goats. Mm-hmm. So if you spend 4 weeks playing a non-GOATS comp and the other team spend 4 weeks playing traditional GOATS comp and then branches out to other things, I think that those other teams will have like a better understanding of it. So as a coach, it's really, really important you know what you're doing and you're not just copying without understanding exactly why Overwatch League teams do the things they do.
Yeah, exactly. You bring a very good point there, because the good thing about running a sort of standard composition that's streamlined and meta is that you have more information to determine what like the coaches were thinking in that situation, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's like from the Overwatch League is running a very niche composition and they only pull it out like twice on a specific strategy, and you're looking at Contenders, it's a lot more difficult to determine their thought process behind it, right? Because there's so many different variables. Like, are they doing this because this player perhaps maybe favors this hero? Is it map dependent? Are they going to switch off on the next point? There's a ton of like variables when people run very niche stuff. But if you're looking at a more streamlined meta composition, like with slight variations of goats, it's a lot more easy to interpret.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually speaking of like slight variations. I think that if you're not confident of of your knowledge of how to run the slight variations, because you could change goats slightly, like introducing a Sombra into the composition, and the entire win condition of the composition change. Because without the Diva, it's very, very different, right? The enemy Zag could just lob a graph in. You're not pressuring. You no longer have any pressure. So there's so many things that are different. So yeah, like what's the baseline right now? What's the baseline of the meta? Goats, right? Traditional goats: Reinhardt, Diva, Zaya, etc. Zen, Lucio, Brigitte. So that is what you should like. That is what I think most Contenders teams should be running, like 99% of the time. And then you start branching out once you master GOAT's composition. But if you're a Contenders team and you're running other things, like you're enamored by Chengdu's Hammond comp, you saw the Sombra variant of the GOAT's comp, and you start running that, and it's a lot harder because it's also a lot harder to copy because there's less information about it. Because if you learn traditional goats, right, you want to run traditional goats. You want to run it in King's Row. How many teams run goats in King's Row? Like 18 out of 20 teams, like almost everyone in Overwatch League runs goats in King's Row, right? So you have a huge sample size. You have a lot of knowledge to pull from. You have a lot of content to base your research on. If you try to copy like the Sombra comp or the 4 DPS comp, you have only 1 to 3 teams that you have the composition to copy it from. You just don't have enough knowledge. You don't have enough sample size, and then you struggle as a coach because you've been teaching the team. You're teaching a team from so little information. Like most of the things are just coming out from theory instead of pulling from a wider resource base that is traditional goats. So, I mean, I think we are going a little bit too in depth into this, but mainly what I'm trying to say is, if you want to copy from the Overwatch League, you need to do it in like a really smart manner, or it will backfire on you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And someone who has like coached in the past, like I've coached for a couple of teams.
Yep.
It's much easier to get that sample size from a more streamlined. I mean, back when I was coaching, I think double sniper was the main thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, that was quite difficult to handle itself as well, because you look at Overwatch League and the just sheer amount of great Widowmaker players that you see. It's sort of like, oh, he's positioning him over here, and he's just done that fantastic shot. Okay, you do the same thing, mate, but they don't do the fantastic shot. It's hilarious. All right, so one thing before we start going ham into the Overwatch League stuff is I want to talk about just... I want to elaborate more on your coaching sort of style, because I've sort of been around your coaching a little bit, like throughout the Oceanic scene. Like I've spec'd a few scrims with you, but that's really about it. But in terms of how your actual style is it sort of more of an authoritarian figure, or do you like to discuss with your players as to how things should shape up? What's your definition of who you are as a coach?
I mean, I used to be more authoritative in Dark-Sided, but now that I'm an assistant coach in LA Gladiators, I have bosses, people above me, people who can veto what I say, right? So I'm more of like, I mainly assist right now. But when I was in Dark-Sided, I definitely took on the more authoritative stance. And it was the same in Avant as well, where I took on like a more authoritative stance because I wanted more control over the team, not just in terms of strategies, but in terms of mental. And when you have authority in the team, then the team isn't just putting trust in themselves. They're also putting trust in the coach strategy, right? Because the coach is confident, the coach did his work, the coach works harder than the players themselves. So the players have a baseline to trust, not just in themselves, which they should, but also in their teammates and their coach at the same time. So having that strong figure is, I think, really, really important in the lower tier scene, like tier 3 and tier 3 and tier 2, because when you have less support structure, then as a coach you really, really have to step up, right? As the mental figure, as the strategical figure. So yeah.
All right, so coming into Overwatch League, of course, first of all, I mean, I have said this to you several times. Congratulations as a person who did know you beforehand. It was awesome seeing a friend sort of go up into that area. But what was your sort of first, actually from memory, watching the Oversight podcast, when I forgot, someone on your team, was it the coach that was on Oversight at one stage?
Yeah, DP.
Yeah, DP was there, and he said the reason why you were picked for like being an assistant coach was because there was sort of this trialing process where there was a bunch of players, and you were sort of giving a criteria as to like, okay, what are they doing wrong, what are they doing good, and like your response to one of the players was like, why are you even trialing this guy in the first place? I find that absolutely hilarious. But
okay, so the Gladiators trial, what they did was there are multiple things. The main thing of what I needed to do, I was supposed to look at 3 Winston players, and all 3 Winston players were renowned Winston players. So these were not like nobodies. Like all 3 names were very familiar names. I'm not going to name the names because we were trialing those players, but they were all familiar names and were all 3 tank players were regarded as good tank players. And then I think Gladiators wanted me to rank the 3 tank players and explain why I ranked them as such. And I said these 2 tank players are pretty good. This guy is so and so. This guy is weak at this, strong at this. This guy is absolutely shit. I have no idea why he's there. Holy shit! I'm so surprised. Why is he so bad? Because it's a renowned name. Like I did something like that, and then I learned later from DP that when they were interviewing coaches, any coach that said that arguably not great player was the best player, and there were a lot of like Contenders coach that said that like that bad tank player was actually, they thought it was really good. Immediately they were struck off like they were just struck off the list of trialing Gladiators coach. Yeah,
that's great. I love that story.
Yeah, I think David DP and the other assistant coach team, they were looking for a coach that understood the game's macro and understood the game's micro at the same time, right? You have to be like Gladiators was looking for a coach that had a more dynamic understanding of the game. It's not like Dallas Fuel, where Dallas Fuel has like a more stringent role for each of their coach, right? They have positional coaches that needed to know each of their position really, really well. So if you're teaching the support things, you need to know Lucio, Zen, and Mercy like inside out, everything around, right? And that's for Dallas Fuel. And maybe you're not expected to do as much macro, but the Gladiators was looking for a coach that had good understanding of the macro and good understanding of micro, and that's why it was a more holistic trialing opportunity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In terms of LA Gladiators and their results, how are you feeling in terms of just their overall performance?
It was pretty predictable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there were some rumors around the internet that said that, I don't know whether you follow like Twitter rumors, but there were rumors that I think Rockers and a couple of others were saying we were Scream Gods. Do you hear the rumor?
Yeah.
They were saying like Gladiators like Scream Gods, like Scream Bugs. We had a lot of Scream Bugs. Mm-hmm. No one like.
Do you think that was true?
Say yes or no, but since this is like a podcast for Fred, yes, it was really true. We were smashing everyone in Screams. So this is like the first time we gave like an official answer. We were doing really well in Screams, but we struggled with a little with consistency because like a couple of new members. So stage 1 was definitely a stage where we were trying to get everyone to work together, establish our comms structure as well. One thing about Gladiators that I learned from is that communication is really important. I know it's like a very, very stereotypical answer, right? If you ask me as a coach in tier 3, hey John, when I'm coaching Open Team, hey John, is communication important? I'm going to tell you yes. But Gladiators has insane emphasis on communication, like insane emphasis. I'm not going to go into how we do it because
it's in the name, mate. The Gladiators.
Yeah, it's in the name, right? Shows up. But yeah, we have a lot of emphasis on like strong fundamentals, and having 2 players from like the Korean region come over, that means that we have to gel different play style together. So stage 1 was where we establish our fundamentals, our new fundamentals, because Gladiators is more or less a new team, right? We are very different from last year. We have a new main tank, we have new DPS. It's a different meta. It's a GOATS meta, which is a meta that most people thought we were weak in. So we had to establish a new baseline, a new fundamentals. And we did it in many ways, right? For the players to get used to each other, and when did it in terms of like activities, we were going out to play paintball. We wanted them to interact with each other, and they did. As the coaches, we also worked really, really hard. Like many times we worked throughout the night, looking at VODs of GOATs, debating on the fly, like GOATs should be this way, GOATs should be that way, to have a better understanding of GOATs. I think I said it in my YouTube channel. I have like a post-it notes. I have like stacks of post-its, and I have a post-it notes on my monitor that says, understand GOATs, like understand GOATs deep shit, like that kind of stuff. Because I felt like I had like a pretty weak understanding of GOATs, right?
Oh, that's great.
Or at least, yeah, because how do I know that I had a weak understanding of GOATs? Because when people say EU GOATs is the best GOATs, and they say EU GOATs is the best because of 1, 2, 3, right? Reason 1, 2, 3. I can't disagree with them. I can't agree with them, but I can't disagree with them. So what does that tell me? That tells me I don't know enough, right? Because I'm someone with like strong opinions. If I can't disagree or agree, that means I don't have enough knowledge. So I spend like immense amount of time like going through like EU VODs and going like, I don't think that's quite right. I don't think that's good. I don't think that looks good. I kind of want to try it out. Then I'll run it with the players. We try out a couple of stuff. I create new theories, and then after that I have like to build like that understanding of how do I want to play GOATs. And we started teaching the team maybe in week 2, week 3. So it took us like a month and a half for us to build our own Gladiators definition of GOATs that only we had, right? And we taught it to the team, and I think we taught it to the team like week 2. We taught it to Decay and Surefall. We had good games against like Shock, I think. We beat them 3-2. And then Decay came in. We went downhill a little bit, lost to Spark and London. But near the I think in the last week 4, I'm not sure whether you followed, but I think we beat like Guangzhou's Charge and what was the other team? Charge and
I have it on my phone somewhere. But I've
beat Charge and Atlanta 4-0.
Atlanta
Rain,
which was your most recent match, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Into week 4, we were very confident. Like at the end of stage 1, I was very sure that we were one of the best coaches. I think we were top 4, top 5. But I mean, I guess we'll never be able to prove it because we're out of playoffs. But
Yeah.
I think that was stage 1 for us. And just building onto building our fundamentals for goats. Yeah.
That
So
is
I understand goats and build fundamentals.
That is unfortunate though. Do you think, I mean, this can be considered a sort of crazy question, but like it is sort of an entertainment one. If you think, I mean, if everyone's saying that you guys were so ridiculously good in scrims, is it a result of like an underperformance on stage, or how do you think that sort of relates itself to? I mean, if everyone's saying that you guys are nuts in scrims.
Yeah, I think there were like many small reasons. It's always like when teams don't perform well on LAN, it's always like a combination of multiple reasons, right? We have, because you must remember that it's DKs and Raw first time out of the country. They've never been out of US, so how would we be if we are like 18 years old, freshly 18, and then we have to fly to another country 10,000 miles away. That's and start playing in the biggest stage of our life. While the forums online, Invent Global and Invent Korea and Reddit, they're talking about Mr. 300k. Right? It's a huge amount of pressure on our DPS player, a huge amount of pressure on our main tank player, because Raw has to play, he has to step into the chair of like Fissure, right? Because Fissure played last year, and Fissure played really well for Gladiators last year. So there's immense amount of pressure, and this kind of pressure for like people that's so young and so inexperienced in the scene is, I think we all need time. Even I need time. Like coming to US, it's my first time in US. I definitely needed time. I felt a little bit homesick. I still feel a little bit homesick, to be honest. And yeah, it just takes all of us time, and that's what we are hoping to achieve in stage 1. Like giving the players and I guess me that amount of time for us to get used to the country, to get used to the environment, to get used to competition, top level competition, and to get used to each other, I guess. Yeah.
So with all that in mind, do you think it's a fairly accurate statement? I mean, I guess from like the first season of Overwatch League, San Francisco Shock was sort of like in a similar situation where like by default, they weren't the most exciting, but like after like Sinatra came in and they started building them like blocks around, they started to get a lot better, of course, like throughout the season coming to the next stage. Do you think that's a sort of similar situation with you guys, and you're just sort of developing your fundamentals? And it wasn't the best result this season, it wasn't the worst either, but like would you say it's sort of more of a building process that you just recently went through?
Yeah, I mean, I think we screamed a lot later than the other teams as well. I think Shock was screaming from October? I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure most of the teams screamed like 1 month earlier than us. We had some visa problems, so we couldn't we couldn't fly all the players over until December. So we had like 1 or 2 months less scrim time than the rest. So we definitely had a lot of problems. I'm not trying to give team excuses. I think every single team has different problems. I do think that Shock was undergoing the same problem as us as well. Integrating their Korean players, getting a new coach, Krusty. I mean, I guess he's been there for a while, but everyone was just, I'm sure that for many of the teams for this season, everyone's just trying to learn more about their new teammates and their new coaching staff and structure. Yep.
Fair enough. In terms of sort of your other opinions about teams in the league, are there any teams that made it through that you were sort of surprised initially?
Wait, let me just pull out the playoff.
He's getting it up. I don't know you made it. I have it in front of me too. It's always good to have a visual reference.
Not really. I mean, one thing about stage 1 is, the difference between the previous season and this season of the Overwatch League is that in the previous season we only had 12. So in every single, and we had 10 matches per stage. Yep. So that means that you more or less play almost every single team in that stage, like a round robin play style. So it's almost always fair because everyone plays the same opponents, right? So it's a relatively fair standing. But in this current stage 1, you play 7 matches, and that means you are playing against 7 different teams out of a maximum of 19 teams. And teams like Dallasfield, they played Shanghai Dragon twice. So we have like huge variance in the opponents that we faced, right? So for example, if you face Paris Eternals in the first 2 weeks, then you would be very, very you would be very, very apprehensive because Paris Eternal in the first 2 weeks was a team that understood codes, right? They mastered their own style of play. And if I'm not wrong, along the way, they started experimenting with different style of play and they lost what they had in the first few weeks. But so if you fought Paris Eternal in the first 2-3 weeks, consider yourself unlucky. But if you fought Paris Eternal in like the last 2 weeks where they were trying to find, if I'm not wrong, they were trying to change up their style of goats, then technically you were a little bit luckier. And it's the same for the other teams as well. Like for Valiant, they were unlucky because they had to fight Vancouver Titans and they had to fight Nixel. Wait, let me check. I think they had to fight like their stage 1 is immensely hard. They had to fight they were fighting they had to fight Guangzhou Charge. No, sorry, Hangzhou Spark, Nixel. They had to fight Titans. So if you had to fight Nixel and Titans, you are literally saying this is 2 matches. These are the 2 top teams. We pretty much have forfeited this stage, right? They're taking two losses, and even if they're not taking 2 losses, it's incredibly hard to fight against 2 top teams because you have to prep so much against these 2 top teams.
Yeah.
For example, they had to fight Nixel in one of the weeks, and straight after Nixel, the very next day they had to fight Toronto. So do you prepare more against Nixel or do you prepare more against Toronto? You literally can't decide. You have to try it, right? So it's just incredibly hard for some of the more unlucky teams.
Actually, just a little side question about that, John Galt, because you bring up a fascinating point. So if you're up against 2 really competitive teams like in the same week, what is your course of action? If you feel like you're the underdog in both of those matches, do you significantly prep for one and ignore the other, or do you sort of just divide them both, or do you think it's more of a sort of play style adaptation?
Yeah, I mean, it probably matters on a lot of things, right? Yeah. It depends on whether
it's obviously not an easy question to answer.
Yeah, it depends on whether that week results to like playoffs as well. If playoff standings is very determinant on like you just need to win 1 match and you'll make it to playoff, you'll clinch playoffs, you might just want to throw everything into that one single into the match against the weaker team because you really, really want that victory. But what if you need to take the risk and you need like as many wins as possible because it's early in the stage or you didn't do very well at the earlier part of the stage? That's when you really, really want to prep for both teams. So it's kind of hard to decide. It's very contextual, and it also depends on what team you're facing off. So yeah, it's very contextual. I'm sorry, I have no answer for that.
Oh no, that's completely fine. As I said, that was a very difficult question to answer, and like I've never been
Finland has to play against like Nixel and
yeah.
Right? They went let me see. They went 2-3 against Nixel and then they went 1-2 against Nixel. So if they've spent like 99% of their time against Nixel, which gave them the 2-3 scoreline, maybe they're regretting it now. Maybe they regretted it after they lost to Toronto. What if they just spent half the time prepping for Toronto? Maybe they lose to Nixel, but maybe they win Toronto, right? So because Toronto was on a journey to improve. Like they didn't look as strong in the start of the stage 1. So if you put more into preparing against Toronto, maybe you could take like the Toronto win and then and just and laugh your way to like a 1-6 stage 1. But I mean, at least 1-6 is like better than 0-7. So I don't know, man. It's really, really hard to say. Yeah, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, it certainly is. But it sort of makes it a little bit fun to sort of see. From like an outside perspective too. All right. So looking inside for the teams that made it, who do you think is sort of like the heavy favorite?
Nixel.
Nixel? No, that was a very, very fast answer. Do you have
I think Nixel
a particular reason? And like separating them from the rest of the league, how like confident are you in terms of a margin?
I mean, in my head, like Nixel is a tier, like they are way better than Titans comes below that, and then Titans is together with Shock. Like I know Shock, like Titans beat Shock, but I'm of the belief that Shock is close to Titans in standards, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen Shock play, I've seen Titans play, and I think Shock is on a good day, Shock should be able to give like Titans a hard time, if not Titans. So I'll definitely want to see a rematch between Shock and Titans. I'm not sure whether that's possible. I haven't seen the brackets yet, but I do think Shock is really, really it's a really, really strong team. Yeah, so I'll say tier 1 is like Nixel. Tier 2 would be teams like Titans, Shock, Titans, Shock. Yeah, maybe just Titans, Shock. Yeah, maybe us. And then yeah.
All right.
And then the I think these two tiers would be like the strongest looking teams. And then the other teams are maybe
Do you think
Toronto?
there is a team sort of outside those tiers that like on a very, very good day, if they play at their prime, they could perhaps cause an upset? Or do you think it's completely out of bounds?
Meh. I don't know. I think
You don't look very confident.
yeah. I'll say like the teams that I just stated, Titans, Shock, and
Right.
Titans, Shock, and Excelsior, they should be able to beat most teams on a consistent basis. Yeah.
Okay.
Regardless of whether it's like a good day or a bad day for the other teams.
All right. That's fair enough.
Because at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons why these three teams are stronger than the other teams is I think because their coaching staff and their player have like understanding of how to run codes. Like they have a good fundamental understanding of how to run codes, and they have like a very strong definition. Like if you see them play, the first thing that comes to your mind is that these people, they have very strong conditional belief on when they want to use bubble, when they want to push, when they want to retreat. They have very, very strong opinions, and these opinions are born out of like a lot of experience in scrims and in official matches. So when these things happen, your Ryan is slightly out of position. These are the teams that will jump on your Ryan. Like these are the teams that are very confident in the correct play. The other teams
quickly.
Yeah, the other teams, they're not going to punish as quickly because either they are inexperienced or they're not even sure whether that's a mistake in the first place. And that comes with like understanding the GOATs meta. I'm not saying like the other coaches are bad or anything. I think most people are still working on their understanding of GOATs. I think all of us are working on our understanding of GOATs, but the teams I stated, Titans, Shock, and Excelsior, they are closest to having like a more holistic understanding of the meta GOATs.
Mm-hmm. All right. Reset everything going into the next
stage. Yeah.
The next stage for Overwatch League. Will that be played on a different patch as well?
Not aware, but it should be. Not aware. Like the Blizzard generally tell.
Okay. Well, it would be very difficult to like sort of make a prediction about teams if we don't know the patch. So I'll probably avoid that question for now.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that of course I do want to talk about actually is your YouTube channel. So I'm an avid fan. I'm a subscriber of Mr. John Galt Overwatch. So basically, for people who may not know, John Galt does have a YouTube channel where he posts a bunch of educational content. I'll have the link down in the subscription. About Overwatch in relation to like coaching philosophies, where he like goes through individual VOD reviews of like a player or a hero. So yeah, feel free to sort of elaborate or self-plug like what your YouTube channel is, if you will. You've been making quite a bit of content recently. Well, or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the past, my YouTube channel used to be stuff like, here, let me teach you how to play Winston, or like, here, let me review this Reinhardt. But recently, my YouTube channel has mainly been my thoughts as an Overwatch League coach. Mm-hmm. So it's more geared towards like direction of it is taking being in the tier 1 scene, being like the top scene of Overwatch, and my opinions about the meta, my opinions about specific matches or specific team fights that I thought are interesting. I think my YouTube channel is more of like more conceptual, where every week there might be like a different team where we might look at a more complicated team fight and analyze it, or we might look at like out tracking, or we might look at the mental game. So yeah, I don't really have like a plan of what I'm going to do on a week-to-week basis. It's just if I have something to say on that,
you'll just post
on that day, on that week, because of a specific experience or a specific incident, you just see it online. Yeah, so no plans.
I mean, you do like, yeah, you do post like a decent amount considering that it is, you know, on the fly.
Yeah.
Do you? I think I've seen you Twitch stream a couple of times. Like, do you do any Twitch streaming for that as well? Like how?
Man, Twitch. The thing about Twitch streaming is like it takes a lot more time.
Yeah.
Right? And I think Jane, learned it the hard way, which is why Jane, like the amount that which is streamed, like it reduced like, really, really drastically. And the reason for that is Overwatch League is a full-time job, so
It is, yeah.
you really have very little time to stream. The only reason why I could do my YouTube stuff is because, one, I put them from my Twitch, some of the content, and two, when I'm trying to record something and it's on the fly, it literally takes very, very little time to edit all these content. I literally record myself talking about a match, and I upload it straight away, and the thumbnail is just me scribbling something in paint. So yeah, not much on post-production there, but yeah, I don't spend much time doing those YouTube videos, which is probably why I'll stagnate at maybe like 1,000+ subscriber, which is fine because it's kind of like a hobby for me.
Yeah.
But I think the main point is for Overwatch League coaches and for Overwatch League players, there is almost no way you could be a top tier player and still have a really healthy stream or really healthy or really like content heavy YouTube channel. There's literally no, because the sacrifice, the time you need to spend to be good, to be at the top level of the competition is immense.
Yeah. And the people who do post, they have like a team.
They have editors for
sort
them.
everything out for them. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So going down the back end of the podcast, I sort of want to talk about your life and how it has sort of changed. So overall, in terms of an experience, because you've been obviously through Pacific, Australia, and now America. You mentioned earlier on you're still adapting to sort of the lifestyle in America. Overall, how would you sort of compare from like and draw from your past experiences? Because obviously it is a little bit of a cultural difference. Is it personally easy for you, or do you think you've been struggling a little bit in that regard?
I think I'm struggling a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
The culture
very honest.
The culture from Singapore is like really, really different. And of course, most of my friends, like my best friends and where I spend most of my time with, right, during the weekends, what I do after school, after work are my Singaporean friends. And I guess interest is just really, really different, right? And I think the easiest solution is just to go out there and meet people, make new friends. Like I said, Overwatch League is a full-time job, and yeah, most of them after the entire day, you're too tired to do anything else. So, which is not to say it's like a bad thing, because I enjoy each of my day thoroughly. I love my freaking job, but it also leaves me very little time to do other stuff, which is I'm not complaining. It's something I'm very, very contented with.
You feel fulfilled with it.
Yeah. So stuff like I'm currently conducting like a lot girlfriend, right? So that's also not easy because the time zone is different. There's literally, when she's working, I'm sleeping. When she ends work, I'm working. It's very, very hard to talk to someone that's literally on the other side of the world that has like a 12 hours difference. It's literally impossible. So that's very, very hard as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Let me think. I'm trying to think of more creative questions for you, because you deserve the best out of the best of the best, Mr. Galt. So I just want to get this straight. Where did you actually, or why did you call yourself John Galt? Was it just off reading?
It's from a book called Atlas Shrugged, which is like it's an Ayn Rand book. It was about objectivism. So most of the time, how I get my name is I'll just pull a character from the book I'm currently. So for example, I'm currently playing The Division, right? Division 2, a new game that just came out.
Yeah.
So for that game, I named myself Judge Holden, which is from Blood Meridian. You know of the book?
Yep.
Yeah, so it really depends on what I'm reading. Yeah, if I'm reading, I don't know, Sword Art Online or Naruto, you probably will see me naming myself Boruto in Apex. So yeah, and I read all kind of stuff, right? I read from like classic literature to philosophical treatise.
The timing was right.
Everything.
John Galt is a good name. We've been fortunate that you're reading that.
Oh, is it a good name? I mean, you have no idea how many people come to me and say, wait, so you're Ayn Rand fan? And I'm going like, oh shit, do I have to explain myself again? Because for those of you guys who don't know, the philosophical concept behind the book is very controversial. Sometimes the people who read the book goes like, why do you name yourself John Galt? Now I can't be your fan anymore. That kind of stuff. So not always, not always a cool experience.
Well,
Yep.
you're
It's interesting.
the enemy.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm the enemy.
feels bad,
Yeah.
man.
So yeah, I've enjoyed. I mean, the takeaway is that I've enjoyed my job. Like coming to LA, it's crazy. I love the food here. Meeting new people is really really insane. Can you imagine like walking down the hallway and then you see the friend running? I need fresh air. That kind of thing. It's insane. These are the people.
Has that happened?
Yeah, it does happen. Like
I wouldn't
just
put it
runs.
past him.
Yeah, quite crazy. He's an eccentric player, but it's just immense, right? Turning the corner, seeing Sherfor, turning another corner, seeing Jay Hong, and then this is like a normal everyday life. This is not like that special day in the year where I get to see Ru Jae Hong or Miro or Fisher. No, it happens every day. You turn the corner and you see another famous player. You turn another corner, that's Monte standing right there, and then you turn another corner, it's Ryan Falls, right? And it becomes mundane, and there's magic in the mundane because you never thought that such a day would become mundane, right? So it's really really cool. Yeah.
Dude, I'm really happy for you. Like,
yeah, thanks.
Like your smile is being contagious right now.
Yeah.
So actually, one of the questions I did want to ask you as well is oh gosh, I just forgot it when I made that line. It was about okay, so I remember. Obviously, you've been a head coach of several teams, and you're the assistant coach in LA Gladiators. Mm-hmm. In an ideal world, or when you maybe think you're personally a lot more, or you progressed a lot more as an individual coach, do you see yourself someday as a head coach of a team, or do you want to be a head coach of a team if you do see the opportunity arise?
I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. Like, ask me this question at the end of stage 3, and I might have like a better answer. But as of right now, my only priority is to help the LA Gladiators get as high as climb as high as possible. Like, help the players as much as possible, and be a better coach myself. Right, as a with the priority being like being a better coach in terms of knowledge, because I think that's the role of an assistant. As an assistant coach, your role is not as much on the mental side, because the head coach is mainly the rah-rah guy, right? The head coach is not just doing strategy, guy making all the decision, being deciding whether he wants to be the authoritarian, the disciplinarian. The assistant coach, we generally are the one that helps out the head coach in the direction that he wants to bring the team in. So how I'm trying to improve myself as a coach right now is mainly through understanding the game better rather than on the mental side. And I think that's really, really important for most coaches. Like, you need to have like a direction you want to drive yourself towards. And if your role is as a mentor coach, or your role is as a head coach, or your role as assistant coach, you define exactly what you want to improve in and work towards that goal. Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess on a sort of closing statement for the podcast, for coaches that are coming up through Contenders, or may be interested in pursuing Overwatch League, because you've done the whole run, you've grinded through different regions, you have a pretty good story. What is sort of your motivation, as cliche as it sounds? Yeah, your advice. Yeah, advice would be a better word to use. What is your advice for people who may be sort of on the same track that you went through? How did you? I mean, we already know how you did it, but what's the best advice in going about it?
Do your homework and know the fundamentals of what you are doing.
Homework.
I swear to God,
it all stems from school.
No, like, because I told you that I've been Pacific scene and the oceanic scene, and the teams that are running GOAT's composition right now in the tier 2 scene, at least in the smaller region, it's not good. I'm just gonna put it at that. Yeah. It's not good at all. So
I was waiting for a comment.
As a coach, it's really, and I've heard stories, right? It's really, really important to always doubt yourself. Like, make sure that you are not wrong, because if you look at if you come to conclusions really, really early on, you will find yourself most of the time to be more wrong than right. And mistakes are punished very, very severely in the tier 2 and tier 3 scene. What do I mean? Because, for example, if you are a coach in the tier 2 scene and you make a mistake in understanding a composition and you teach it to your team, you will not do well in contenders. And not only, if you don't do well in contenders, then you won't be able to upgrade your position, right? You won't be able to find a team that will offer you a slot, like an academy team or an Overwatch League team. So as a coach, you always want to be finding new opportunities. If you are coaching an open div team, you want to find yourself in contenders. If you find yourself in contenders, you want to coach the best team in contenders. You want to move on to more well-known region, etc., etc. So you want to always be opportunistic. So it's very, very important, like very, very important, to be the coach that you want to be by the time you reach the Overwatch League. So even before you enter the Overwatch League, you need to be an Overwatch League coach already, because that's the only way you will get spotted for Overwatch League, right? Being the best contenders coach will not get you in the Overwatch League. Being an Overwatch League quality coach in contenders will get you into the Overwatch League. So be very, very, very careful of your conclusions as a coach, and always question yourself as a coach, so that you're almost always learning, right? So that if you have a mistake and if you make a mistake in one of your strategies, you realize it's a mistake literally immediately, rather than waiting for the end of the season and then thinking to yourself, crap, I was gonna curse, but crap, I made a serious mistake. I shouldn't have taught my team this. Now we missed playoffs by one game. So yeah, be very, very careful as a coach.
I agree.
Don't be arrogant.
I certainly agree.
Don't be arrogant. Never be arrogant. Be confident.
That helps. And yeah, you're right. And when you sort of doubt yourself, like the best way you can learn is, of course, is making mistakes. And once you do acknowledge that the mistakes are there, it's only going to get better. And I'm sure you've done that. I've done that in the past. But yeah, it's been pretty fun. So before we close off, because I myself am probably going to have a shower, have a nice cup of tea, and probably go to bed. I'm going to wake up early tomorrow. I've been doing my podcasts are going to be released on different dates, but I've actually recorded quite a few now, which is good. So organization, fellas. Do you have any shout outs before you wanted to sign off? Shields up.
Yeah, why not, right?
I mean, you have the jumper there.
Showfall, Bistro, Raw, DK, all the players of the Gladiators. I think the Gladiators support the coaches as well, right? DP and Tim. I think they are very capable coaches. And yeah, coming to Gladiators, I think one thing that I found that I'm amazed at is how much the other coaches know. Most of the time, this is gonna sound, I hope this doesn't sound egoistic, but most of the time in Contenders, I'm the one doing the hard work. I'm the one grinding. So most of the time, I find that I know a decent amount, which maybe the other coaches in Contenders, maybe they're still working to understand. But in Overwatch League, everyone has a lot of experience. Everyone understands concept really, really quickly. So I find myself getting tested, getting questioned every single stage of the way, in any single week, in practicing any single composition. I need to understand macro and micro at any single moment of time. So the other coaches spur me on as well. And the players spur me on as well. And one thing about Overwatch League players, I know it's digressing a little, but one thing about Overwatch League players are the Gladiators players. I don't have much experience with the other players, but the Gladiators players specifically, they are very, very, very smart. They're very, very smart. Yeah, most of the time, they're capable of spotting mistakes even before I spot them. So it's also something I have to watch myself in, because to be able to coach them, I need to know things that I need to work on my own knowledge as well. So they keep me on my toes, definitely. So shout out to Gladiators, which have really hardworking players and really hardworking coaching staff. And I'm sure we're going to do well in Stage 2 and Stage 3, because we have proved to do very well in Stage 1. Even though we did well at the end of Stage 1, it showed that we could improve, and we showed that we are aware of our own shortcoming. So Stage 2 is going to be a different stage, especially and beyond. So shout out to Gladiators, shows up, support us.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much, John Galt, for joining the podcast, mate. Much appreciated. Haven't talked in a long time, but it's been a wonderful conversation. Learn about your past, your present, your future. We've covered through everything. I'm really happy through what we've done. But yeah, once again, mate, salutations. Thank you for everyone watching this podcast. Really appreciate it. Take care and shields up.